Hi guys, I thought I'd just make a couple of short videos outlining Henry VII's relations with Europe's major powers. So this one's going to focus on France and Brittany. The Brittany crisis, of course, dominated the early years of Henry VII's foreign policy, and France, as the traditional enemy of England, was always going to play an important part in England's diplomatic relations with other countries. So Brittany, first of all, the Brittany affair, as I say, dominated the early years of Henry's reign. Henry felt that he owed the Duke of Brittany, Francis II, he owed him something because he'd safeguarded him whilst Henry was in exile. So Henry felt that when France threatened Brittany, he needed to do something to help Francis at that time. The situation is complicated because Henry had been given financial aid and he'd been given help in becoming King of England by Charles VIII of France. So that does complicate the situation, because Charles was also very keen to take Brittany. So this represented a threat to England, as the entire Channel coast, because Brittany is in northwest France, would then be under French control. So Brittany asked Henry for help, which is the worst case scenario for him. The problem that Henry had was he couldn't act alone. Fortunately, he had Maximilian, the Holy Roman Emperor, who wanted to help in Brittany. He wanted to marry Anne of Brittany, of course, and also Spain as well wanted to offer some assistance. But basically, this was a policy which was destined to fail. Anne eventually married the French king. Anne of Brittany eventually married Charles VIII. Henry did send troops to help France, so look at the Treaty of Redon, for example, but it ended in failure for Henry. So that takes us to France. So Henry, because of a number of situations, mainly Perkin Warbeck, decided in 1492 that he was going to assert that English claim to the French throne. So he gathered an invasion force and they set sail for France. It was timed for October 1492 for the sort of end of the campaigning season, so that basically no fighting would take place. Henry also knew that Charles VIII's priorities rested in Italy. He had his eyes set on Milan and Naples, so he wouldn't really want to fight, and he didn't want to fight. He offered Henry a treaty of Etaples. Henry accepted that. So out of that treaty, what Henry got was the French king, Charles VIII, said that he wouldn't help any English rebels, so no more help for Warbeck. France would pay an arrears of the pension that they owed, going back to Edward IV and the Treaty of Picardy. France would pay England's expenses for the aid that they'd offered to Brittany, and Henry would get an income of about £5,000 a year from France, which is approximately 5% of his annual income. So after 1492, England did clash again with France. So in 1495, the League of Venice was established, and its aim was to drive France out of Italy. This initially excluded England, but it was branded, I guess, as the Holy League in 1496, with England added. England was added, but England had agreed, and this goes back to the Treaty of Etaples and the terms of that treaty. England wouldn't have to commit themselves to go to war with France under the terms of the Holy League. Henry also signed trade deals with France. So basically, he was on quite good relations with them. So after the death of Arthur, and later, and the following year Elizabeth, and then the following year Isabella of Castile, Henry did attempt to broker a three-part deal between France, the Netherlands and England to move against Spain, and it did look as if he was successful in 1508 with the League of Cambrai. Unfortunately, and this leaves England isolated at the end of Henry's reign, just before the League of Cambrai was due to be sealed, France withdrew because they didn't want to antagonise Spain. France then joined with Spain, leaving England isolated. So very much a mixed relationship that he had. It was a mixed bag, the successes and failures that Henry had with France.